Hadn't planned on stopping at the grocery store that Saturday morning. I was already running late to meet my buddy Pete for coffee, and I told myself I'd just grab a few things, milk, maybe some bread, and be out in 10 minutes. That's when I saw her. My daughter was standing in the cereal aisle, staring at a box of off-brand oatmeal like it held the answers to every question she'd ever had. She was wearing the same gray hoodie she'd had since college. Her son, my grandson, 4 years old, was sitting in the cart, quietly holding a small toy truck I'd never seen before. She hadn't heard me walk up. "Sweetheart," she flinched. Actually flinched, then turned around and smiled. But it was the kind of smile that takes effort, the kind you practice in the mirror because you know people are going to ask how you're doing and you need something ready. "Dad." "Hi." She put the oatmeal in the cart. "I didn't know you shopped here." "I don't, usually." I looked at my grandson. He waved at me with the truck. "Hey, buddy." "Pop, pop," he said. That was it. Just pop, pop. But the way he said it, like he was checking to make sure I was real, stuck with me. I looked back at my daughter. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her hair was pulled back, and not in the neat way she used to wear it, just pulled back, out of the way. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in a week and was pretending it wasn't a big deal. "Where's your car?" I asked. It came out casual, like I was just making conversation. But I already knew something was off. She paused. Just a half second. Then, "It's getting some work done." "What kind of work?" "Just maintenance stuff." She started moving the cart slowly toward the end of the aisle. I walked with her. "Sweetheart." "Dad, I'm fine. I didn't say you weren't." She stopped walking. She looked at my grandson for a moment, who was now turning the wheels on his truck and making quiet engine sounds. Then she looked at me, and I saw it, that thing parents learn to recognize after decades. That look a kid gets when they've been holding something for too long and they don't know how to put it down. "Patrick has the car," she said. "Patrick is her husband." "Okay," I said. "Why?" "He said he needed it this weekend. His mom needed a ride to some things." I didn't say anything. I just waited. "She's been staying with us," my daughter added, like she was telling me the weather, "for about 5 months. 5 months. Her mother-in-law had been in that house for 5 months, and my daughter was standing in a grocery store on a Saturday morning, taking the bus with a 4-year-old, buying store-brand oatmeal, and telling me she was fine. "Abby," I said, in the way I said her name, her actual name, not sweetheart, not honey. She looked at me. "How long has this been going on?" She didn't answer right away. She straightened a box of granola bars on the shelf next to her, fussed with it. Then she said, quietly, not looking at me, "A while." I didn't push her there. We paid for her groceries. I loaded them into my car and drove her home, which was 20 minutes away. My grandson fell asleep in the car seat we keep in the back for him. She sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window. "About halfway there," I said, "talk to me." And she did. I need to back up a little. My daughter is 31 years old. She's smart, not in the way people say it to be polite, but genuinely, quietly smart. She studied accounting, worked her way into a good firm downtown, and by the time she was 28, she was doing well enough that she was helping me figure out my retirement contributions when I was the one who was supposed to have all the answers. She met Patrick at a work function. He was in sales, charming the way some salespeople are. Not fake exactly, but smooth. The kind of smooth that impresses you the first few times, and then later, you realize it never really turned off. He was always on. I had concerns. I told my wife about them. My wife said I was being a protective father and maybe I should let my daughter make her own choices, and she was right about the protective father part, so I let it go. They got married 4 years ago. Small wedding, nice enough ceremony. Patrick's mother, Sandra, was there, and she was the kind of woman who manages a room without appearing to try. She'd compliment you, and somehow you'd walk away feeling slightly diminished. My wife noticed. We talked about it on the drive home. Then we let it go. After the wedding, things seemed okay. My daughter and Patrick bought a house in the suburbs about 40 minutes from me. I'd visit on Sundays sometimes. Patrick was usually around, usually pleasant, usually a little distant with me in the way some men are with their father-in-law, like they're waiting to be evaluated. Then their son was born, and things shifted. My daughter cut back her hours at the firm to part-time. Patrick suggested it, said it made more sense for one of them to be more available for the baby, and his job paid more, so the math worked out. I didn't love that conversation when she told me, but again, not my marriage. But then Sandra started coming around more. First it was weekends, then longer visits. By the time my grandson was 2, Sandra had a standing presence in that house. She had opinions about how my daughter ran the kitchen, how she disciplined my grandson, how she spent money. My daughter would tell me these things in small doses, framed lightly, always ending with, "But it's fine, Dad." I should have pushed harder then. I know that now. In the car driving to her house, she told me the rest. 6 months ago, Patrick had suggested they consolidate their finances. He said it would be simpler. One joint account, everything going in and out together, easier to track. It sounded reasonable. She agreed. What happened next happened gradually. The debit card linked to her personal spending account stopped working one day. She assumed it was a bank issue. Patrick said he'd look into it. He didn't, or said he had, and it was being sorted. A week passed, then another. When she finally called the bank herself, she found out the account had been restructured. Her name was on it, but Patrick had set himself as the primary contact for any changes. He hadn't removed her, exactly, but he'd arranged things so that any transaction she tried to make over a certain amount triggered a notification to him first. She hadn't known. "Did you say something to him?" I asked. "He said it was to help us budget better. He said I wasn't great with money." She paused. "He said it nicely. I kept my hands on the wheel. Kept my voice even." "And your car?" She looked out the window. "He said his mom needed it this weekend. I said I needed it for groceries, and he said I could take the bus or just order delivery. I said delivery's expensive, and he said maybe that's a sign we should be more careful about what we're spending. And Sandra, she's been there since April. It was September. She keeps talking about whether it makes more sense for her to just stay. Patrick thinks it would help with childcare. I'd stop working completely and she'd help with the house." "What do you think?" Long pause. "I think I'm tired," she said. "I think I've been tired for a long time and I'm not sure when that started." I turned off the highway. "Abby, do you want to stay in this marriage?" She didn't answer for a long moment. Then, "I don't know what I want. I don't know if I trust what I want anymore." That sentence, I've thought about it almost every day since. I don't know if I trust what I want anymore. That's not something a person says when they're fine. That's something a person says when they've been told, quietly and repeatedly and in gentle voices, that their instincts are wrong, when you're not great with money, and maybe you should be more careful, and it's just easier this way, have stacked up high enough that she can't see over them anymore. We pulled into her driveway. Patrick's car was there, but my car, the one I'd signed over to my daughter 3 years ago when I bought a new one, wasn't. "He took your car to drive his mother around," I said. "She had a few errands." I sat there for a moment. My grandson woke up when we stopped and started talking to his truck again. "Go inside," I told her. "Get him some lunch. I'm going to sit here for a minute. I want to be honest about what I felt sitting in that driveway." I wasn't angry in the explosive way. I was angry in the cold way, the kind that settles into your chest and makes everything very quiet and very clear. I'm 58 years old. I spent 30 years working as an operations manager for a regional freight company. I dealt with contract disputes, vendor disagreements, situations where someone was trying to take something that wasn't theirs and expected you to smile about it. I know what leverage looks like. I know what it looks like when someone dismantles another person's options one small decision at a time. What Patrick had done to my daughter wasn't dramatic. That's what made it effective. There was no shouting, no obvious cruelty, nothing she could point to and say there, "That's the moment." It was the car being unavailable, the account being restructured, the mother-in-law who'd been there 5 months and was being discussed as a permanent fixture, the part-time work becoming a conversation about not working at all. Every exit slowly narrowed. I sat in that driveway and I thought about my daughter saying she didn't know if she trusted what she wanted anymore. Then I got out of the car. I knocked on the front door. Patrick answered. He was surprised to see me. I didn't call ahead, which was intentional. "Hey, Richard," he said. He always called me by my first name. I never asked him to. "Hey." I looked past him into the house. "Sandra around?" A flicker of something. "She's in the living room." "Why? Mind if I come in?" He stepped back. I walked in. Sandra was in the living room. She'd rearranged some of the furniture. I'd been there enough times to notice. A chair that used to face the window now faced the television. Small thing. But it wasn't her chair. "Richard," she said, pleasantly surprised. "What a nice surprise!" "Sandra." I sat down across from her without being invited to. "I'll be straightforward with you because I think you'd appreciate that." She looked at me. Patrick was standing near the doorway. "I'm taking my daughter and my grandson with me when I leave today," I said. "They're going to stay at my house for a while. I think some space will be good." Patrick started to say something. "I'm not finished," I said. Calm, not loud, just certain. "The car my daughter has been driving, I'd like the keys before I go. It's in my name." That was true. When I'd given her the car 3 years ago, we'd talked about transferring the title and just never gotten around to it. The registration and insurance were still in my name. I'd been meaning to handle it. I was grateful, sitting in that living room, that I hadn't. You can't just. Patrick stopped. He was doing the math. "I'm also going to suggest," I said, "that you and my daughter have a real conversation about your marriage, with a counselor present. But that's a conversation for another day. Today, I'd just like the keys." Sandra said something about how this was a family matter and perhaps things were being blown out of proportion. I looked at her, not unkindly, just steadily, and I said, "You've been in this house for 5 months. You've been helpful, I'm sure, but this is their marriage and their house, and the best thing you can do for your son right now is let him and his wife figure this out without you in the room." She stopped talking. I don't say that to make myself sound like some kind of tough guy. I say it because sometimes the thing that needs to be said is just the plainest version of the truth, and it works better when you say it quietly. Patrick gave me the keys. My daughter had packed a bag while I was talking to them. I'd texted her to do it while I was sitting in the driveway. She came downstairs with my grandson and a duffel bag, and the way she looked at me when she came down those stairs, I had to look away for a second. She looked like she'd been holding her breath for months, and someone had just told her she was allowed to stop. We drove back to my house. My grandson immediately found the old toy bins I keep in the second bedroom and got very busy. My daughter sat in the kitchen while I made coffee and didn't say much for a while. Then she said, "What did you say to them?" "Not a lot. Mostly just the truth." "Patrick must have been. He was fine," I said. "He was surprised. But he'll be fine." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "I feel like I should be more upset, or more scared, or something." "What do you feel?" She thought about it, like something's been turned back on. We sat there for a while. My grandson came into the kitchen with a small plastic dinosaur and demanded to know if it was a carnivore or herbivore. And I said carnivore, and he looked very serious and said, "I thought so," and went back to the other room. My daughter laughed. A real one. The kind I hadn't heard in a while. In the weeks that followed, there was a lot of the hard, slow work that doesn't make for much of a story, but matters more than anything. She called her firm and asked about moving back to full-time. Her manager was glad to hear from her. They'd missed her, apparently. She had a lawyer walk her through the joint account situation, and it turned out that what Patrick had done wasn't technically illegal, but it wasn't clean either, and there were steps she could take to restructure things in a way that protected her. Sandra went back to her own home. I don't know exactly what Patrick said to her. My daughter told me there were some difficult conversations, but she left. Patrick and my daughter are working with a counselor. I don't know if the marriage survives. That's not my decision, and I've stopped having strong opinions about it. What I know is that my daughter goes to those sessions and comes home clearer each time, and she's back at work, and she drives her own car to her own job, and at the end of the week she calls me and tells me about her day. 2 weeks ago, she called me and said, "I figured out what I want." "Yeah?" I said. "Yeah. I'm still working out the specifics, but I know what I want." I didn't ask her what it was. She'll tell me when she's ready. The point wasn't the answer. The point was that she trusted herself to know it again. I've been a father for 31 years. I've gotten a lot of it wrong. I worked too many hours when she was young. I missed things I shouldn't have missed. There was a period when she was 16 where we didn't talk easily, and I didn't know how to fix it, and it went on longer than it should have. But I was in that grocery store that Saturday morning because I had decided a few years back to stop assuming everything was fine just because nobody said it wasn't, to pay attention, to show up, literally, to the ordinary Saturday mornings, not just the holidays and the emergencies. I didn't do anything extraordinary in that driveway. I just saw clearly what was happening, said what needed to be said, and stayed calm enough to be useful. But I'll tell you this, and I mean it. The look on my daughter's face when she came down those stairs with her bag, and the way my grandson said, "Pop, pop," in the cereal aisle like he was checking to make sure I was real, that's everything. That's the whole thing. I've thought a lot about what actually happened that Saturday. Not the conversation in the driveway, not the moment Patrick handed me the keys, but the part before all of it. The part where I almost didn't stop. I was running late. I had somewhere to be. I almost walked past that cereal aisle. That's the thing nobody talks about when they say trust your gut. Your gut doesn't announce itself. It doesn't tap you on the shoulder and say, "Pay attention, something's wrong here." It just makes you slow down for half a second in a grocery store. And what you do with that half second is entirely up to you. I slowed down. I saw my daughter's face. And I didn't talk myself out of what I saw. That's the whole story, really. Everything else followed from that one decision. What Patrick did to Abby didn't happen overnight. That's what I want people to understand. There was no single moment of cruelty, no obvious line that got crossed. It was a series of small, reasonable-sounding adjustments. The joint account, the reduced hours, the mother-in-law who just kept staying. Each one had an explanation. Each one alone seemed manageable, but they were building something, and what they were building was a version of my daughter who no longer trusted her own judgment, who bought store-brand oatmeal and said she was fine, who had forgotten what she wanted because she'd been told, gently and consistently, that what she wanted was wrong. That kind of damage is quiet. It doesn't leave marks you can point to, and that's exactly what makes it so hard to walk away from. Because when there's no single moment you can name, it's easy to believe you're overreacting. Easy to keep adjusting. Easy to disappear slowly into someone else's version of your life. Abby is one of the most capable people I know. She can read a balance sheet faster than most people I've worked with professionally. She is not naive and she is not weak. That matters, because I think people want to believe that this kind of thing only happens to a certain kind of person, someone less educated, less aware, less strong. It doesn't. It happens to people exactly like my daughter, because the people who do it are skilled at finding the edges of someone's confidence and pressing on them quietly until those edges start to give. What I had that day was clarity, and I had it because I wasn't inside it. I could see what she couldn't, not because I'm smarter, but because I was standing outside the situation looking in. That's what the people around us are for. Not to make our decisions, but to remind us what we look like when we've forgotten ourselves. I didn't rescue my daughter. I want to be clear about that. She's the one who packed the bag. She's the one who made the calls, talked to the lawyer, went back to work, sat in that counselor's office week after week, and did the hard thing of figuring out what she actually wanted. I just showed up on a Saturday morning and told her the truth about what I saw. Showing up is underrated. Not for the big moments. People show up for those. For the ordinary ones. The Tuesday afternoons. The Saturday mornings. The cereal aisle. If there's anything I'd want someone to take from this, it's that. Pay attention to the people you love. Not just when something is obviously wrong, but when everything seems fine. Because sometimes fine is the cover story. Sometimes fine is what someone says when they've run out of words for what's actually happening. And if you're the one who's been saying you're fine, I hope you have someone like that in your life. Someone who slows down. Someone who looks at you and sees through it. And if you don't, I hope you find the courage to be that person for yourself because you already know the truth. You just need someone to remind you it's okay to say it out loud.